Hi beautiful, welcome to my channel. In today's video I am talking about one of my favorite makeup subjects, and that is makeup brushes. Two of my favorite holy grail must-used brush companies have come out with new brush sets, and in today's video I want to show you them side by side, and I have so many comparisons amongst the different complexion brushes between BK Beauty and REPHR. I have like 12 brushes sitting in front of me right now, and I am going to show you them all and compare them all so that ultimately you can make the right decision for yourself. We're going to be talking about the LC collection from REPHR, which is a set of 3 complexion brushes. These are synthetic fiber brushes from REPHR, and LC stands for liquid and cream, so these are meant to be used with liquid and cream products on your face. As you guys may or may not know, probably if you watch my channel often enough, you know I love REPHR brushes, and a lot of their brushes are made out of natural hair. However, when it comes to blending out liquids or cream products, synthetic bristles work better, and so they've been developing these brushes for a while now. REPHR uses customers' feedback in order to make their products better, so when they started developing their complexion brushes, it looked a lot different than what this final result is. The link to these brushes, by the way, is down below in the description box of this video, so if you end up going for this set, please do so using the link I'm leaving you in the description box below. The retail price of these brushes is $80. However, if you get the concept store discount, which only means you have to give them feedback on your experience with the brushes, you can get the set for $50, which in my opinion is much better, especially in exchange for some feedback. So we're going to be diving into these brushes, exactly what they work for, what they feel like, and comparing them with the other brushes we'll talk about today. The other main set of brushes I'm going to be talking about today is the new core collection set from BK Beauty, which is these 3 brushes right here. We have 3 brushes on one side, 3 brushes on the other side. This set retails for $95, and this set will be linked right here in the video. You should see it popping up on the screen right now. So please get it from there if you decide to go for this one. As you may notice, some of the brush shapes are similar between the sets, and I also have in front of me the now sold out Complexion Trio, which also has similar shapes in their brushes, so we can compare all of the similarly shaped brushes together and I can tell you my thoughts on them. This set right here retailed for $120. As I said, it is now sold out, but hopefully, hopefully it'll come back at some point. I do love this set quite a bit. I went ahead and did my makeup today with both new sets side by side. On my left side, I used the core complexion set from BK Beauty, and on my right side, I went ahead and used the LC set from REPHR, so I could compare how all of these brushes work and exactly why I like them and how I like to use them. Let's first talk in detail about the REPHR LC set, and this, as I said earlier, looked a lot different when it first started. The first iteration of complexion sets from REPHR was this right here. These were the brush number 36 for concealer, which by the way I happen to love, and then the brush 31 for foundation, which in my opinion was okay. What I did not love about that one, myself in particular, was that it was, I believe, natural bristles, and natural bristles just leave streaks when it comes to using liquid products, and so with that brush I had to really work in the product in order to make it look streak free. The second iteration of these brushes were BO1, BO2, and BO3, and the community in general thought these brushes weren't soft enough, so they went back to the drawing board and came out with my favorite complexion brushes they had up until this set, which were brushes BO4 and BO5, which I have right here in front of me. I showed you guys these brushes at the beginning of the year. I remember the first time I used them and you guys asked me a lot of questions about it was when I did the one video I uploaded from Italy, because I took these brushes on my trip and they were the only ones I used the whole time and I loved them. these brushes, in my opinion, are super soft and they blend out liquid and cream products extremely smoothly. I find that the brush BO4 was the perfect size for a foundation brush for me, and I find BO5 from REPHR to be excellent when it comes to detail work like concealer and whatnot. These brushes, as you can see, have a matte handle with pretty dark black synthetic bristles. I highly recommended this brush duo when it first came out a few months ago, and I still of course do. And now the new iteration, the latest for final approval of these brushes, is this trio that we're going to talk about today. Now the first thing I want to say is that LC03 is basically the same exact thing as BO4. They have the same bristles, the same design, the same size. The only difference is the color of the bristles. As you can see, the BO4 has pretty much all black synthetic bristles versus the REPHR LC03 has more of a mix with some lighter bristles next to the barrel that just differentiates the brush more from the matte black barrel to the bristles of the brush. So honestly, it's just a matter of like the color. Everything else about both of these brushes is the exact same. So obviously I love the new LC03 just as much as I've been loving the BO4, which I've been using for the longest time. And the same exact thing happens when it comes to the concealer brush. So the BO5 and the LC01 are the exact same brush, exact same design. The only difference is, once again, the color of the hairs. The BO5 being a lot darker in bristles than the new LC01. Now, what excites me most about this collection and this trio was that they made an in-between size, and when they first came out with this Complexion duo, the first thing I thought of, the main feedback I gave them, was that they needed a size in the middle, and they have delivered. And so now we have the LC02 brush, which in my opinion was needed and is going to be perfect because this is going to be the brush that blends out your liquid or cream bronzers and liquid or cream blushes. This year was huge when it came to liquid and cream products. You saw in my blush and bronzer rankings videos how many different liquid and cream bronzers and blushes came out. And a brush like this is exactly what you need in order to blend out those products. I've been using brushes very similar to this one, which again we'll get into comparisons later, from BK Beauty in order to blend out my bronzers and blushes all throughout the year. And I also use the BO4 a lot for that. But I did think that for matters of bronzer and blush, this one was just a little bit too big for the task. So I'm beyond thrilled to have an in-between shape. When I was doing my makeup today, I used the LC03 brush in order to blend out my foundation. The foundation I used was the About Face foundation, and of course the LC03 did a fantastic job at very quickly working that foundation into my skin very smoothly and very streakless. Something I wanted to note about this foundation brush in particular is if you don't clean your foundation brush every time you use your makeup, which I didn't while I was traveling, you may notice that with some synthetic foundation brushes, you can use them when they're clean and they're going to give you a streak-free application. You might use them a couple more times and still get that streak-free application, but when product starts building onto your brush bristles, the bristles start kind of coming together and bunching up in some areas, and so by maybe the third or fourth time you use it, you're going to have a bit more trouble blending out the foundation because it no longer is a streak-free application. I usually clean my brushes with a daily makeup cleaner every time I use them, but what we're not going to do is we're not going to lie to ourselves and say we've never applied foundation with a brush that's previously been used. So I figure majority of you guys know what I'm talking about. Now, as I said, I did take this brush with me to Italy. I was in Italy for 3 weeks and I did not have the luxury of having my daily makeup cleaner with me. I forgot it, and I was in between hotels. I couldn't deeply wash my brush often because I needed it dry in order to apply my makeup. So what ended up happening is I used my brush and used my brush without cleaning it for days. I would try to get off any excess on like tissue or a paper towel, but I didn't have the spray to fully clean it and get all of the product out, and it never applied the foundation with a streak even when I had used it for several days without cleaning it. So that was definitely very surprising to me. I was able to get a streak-free application even after not having washed it for several days. So I thought that was definitely commendable and worth noting. With that said, going back to what I was saying, the foundation application with this brush is always smooth, always seamless, always very fast. And I love this size of brush for foundation application because it's not too big and I can still get into my smaller areas without much trouble. I went ahead and blended out my color corrector today with the LC01, which I find to be fantastic for inner corner work because it just fits so well right in the inner corner of my eyes, and it very easily taps out my color corrector from underneath my eyes. Again, this was very seamless. I also love this brush, by the way, to apply eyeshadow primer to my eyelid and right underneath my brow because it just fits so perfectly there. And then I went ahead and of course used the new middle size, which I'm very excited about, the LC02, and I used this brush on my right side in order to blend out my bronzer, my liquid bronzer. This one was my Say Beauty liquid bronzer, which it blended out extremely seamlessly. It worked the product into my skin in an instant, and I think it is the perfect size in order to get that job done. Besides that, I was very excited to use this brush for blush as well. I also used the Say Beauty blush today, and it blended out my Say Beauty blush in an instant and worked it into that bronzer beautifully. When I tell you, I already was in love with the previous iteration of this set, but I find that now with a middle size it is pure perfection because you could truly get everything done with these three brushes. Moving on to the BK Beauty set that I want to compare it to. So BK Beauty came out with the 115 brush, which is an in-between size for them. So BK Beauty had the 101, which is their foundation brush that made them go viral. This foundation brush is absolutely iconic. So they had the 101 and they had the 109, which I also absolutely love. And so now they have the 115, which is the one with the silver barrel, which as you can see is an in-between size. It's in between the 101 and the 109, and also happens to be very similar in size to the REPHR L03 brush. We'll get into a more detailed comparison in a second, but I just wanted to quickly show you. Anyways, so BK Beauty now has the 115, which today I used to apply my foundation, and I found that it did an absolutely incredible job at applying my foundation. And I think I actually might like the 115 brush from BK Beauty even better than the 101 brush from BK Beauty when it comes to foundation blending, because I find that this size is a bit more ideal for me when it comes to blending out my foundation. Sometimes the 101 is a bit overwhelming, it's a bit massive. You can't easily get it through the smaller areas on your face. It does cover a huge area very fast, but I find the 115 to be a bit more detail oriented when it comes to blending out your foundation, and a bit more to my preference, if that makes sense. So the 115 was the first brush I tried from the new Core Collection trio from BK Beauty, and I absolutely loved the foundation application with this brush. None of the brushes in this new Core Collection trio were small enough for my color corrector, so I moved on to my concealer, and I used the 114 brush from BK Beauty for my concealer, which is this new flat paddle brush that they came out with that I think is perfect, not just for concealer application, because I do find that it fits really nicely underneath the eye and it blends out your concealer very seamlessly. I also took it to my eyelid area and it did an okay job over there. But the cool thing about this brush is that I immediately thought not only of using it for cream or liquid products, but I find that the 114 brush from BK Beauty is also excellent for powder application. Now, because I'm very particular about applying powder underneath my eyes, I didn't try applying powder underneath my eyes with this one because I didn't think that would be fair. I went ahead and applied powder with this one throughout the center of the face. So I used it to apply powder on my forehead, next to my nose, my chin, around the mouth area. I applied powder with the 114 brush, and I found that it did an excellent job, not just at blending out the concealer, but also at applying a bit of powder throughout the center of the face. Underneath my eyes, I simply prefer to use a brush, and I thought that this paddle brush, because it's pretty densely packed, would apply too much powder to the under eye area. So I tested it in places that I knew would not have bothered me. Anyways, this 114 brush from BK Beauty I found to be very multifunctional and very soft, and I quite liked it. And then I went for the BK Beauty 116 brush in order to blend out my contour and blush. I used a bit of a buffing motion when blending out my contour with this one, and it did a fantastic job at blending out my liquid contour slash bronzer products from Say Beauty. I also found that it did a terrific job at blending out my blush afterwards. Again, no complaints with this one. Now, I will say, when it comes to blending out bronzer and blush, for some reason I do prefer the like paddle type brush application, like the 115, rather than a round brush, but that's just very personal preference of me. So in conclusion, both sets of course are incredible quality, and I find to do a fantastic job when blending out your cream and liquid products. Let's get into some size comparisons between all of these brushes I'm holding. A lot of you probably have seen or own the BK Beauty 101 brush, which, like I said, is their best selling brushes and one of the brushes that they first created where the brand became very popular, because this was truly a revolutionary brush shape and size, and truly one of the first foundation brushes to create a very streak-free experience, which I love. The second largest size out of all of the brushes I've mentioned is going to be the new LC3 from REPHR. Let me make sure my camera is in focus, which, as you can see, is just a little bit less wide and a little bit shorter than the BK Beauty 101 brush. So here is the side profile comparison. Here is the front. When it comes to how much these brushes bend, I find that the BK Beauty one is going to be a little bit more bendy, especially towards the back of the brush. Like these taller bristles back here are going to be a bit more bendy versus the REPHR one, which is still very nice and bendy. But I think because these back bristles are shorter, they don't tend to bend as much as the BK Beauty one. So here is once again a side profile of both brushes, BK Beauty 101 versus REPHR LC3. The next size is going to be the brand new 115 from BK Beauty. By the way, the BK Beauty handles, as you can see, are a little taller, a little longer than the REPHR ones. So here is the new 115 from BK Beauty, and let's do a side profile comparison between this one and the REPHR LC3. And here's what they look like from the front. The BK one is a little bit more narrow than the REPHR one in this instant, and size wise I think the front bristles probably start around the same distance from the barrel, but the REPHR one has taller hairs towards the back here versus this one does not go as tall towards the back. The sizes of these two though are barely different, pretty similar, and the BK one is a little less bendy than the REPHR one. It feels, especially towards the front here, just a tad bit stiffer, but honestly barely a difference as well. And then in regards to like how the different synthetic bristles feel on your face, and I'm going to go ahead and use all of the ones I've mentioned so far, I think the BK ones feel like a tiny bit more prickly than the REPHR one, but overall they're all pretty smooth. So let's move on to the next size down. We had the 115 from BK, and then the next size is going to be the BK Beauty 109 brush, which as you can see by the side profile is going to be a lot bendier than the 115 because it has a lot less density when it comes to the amount of bristles used for both brushes, which also makes the BK Beauty 109 be very, very bendy because it's pretty thin on the side profile. And then once you put them in front, I think they're almost just as wide. I barely see a difference in the width of these brushes. It's more so the stiffness provided by the fact that the 115 is a lot more packed with bristles versus the BK Beauty 109. The next size is going to be the BK Beauty 109 versus the new REPHR LC02. You can see on the side profile here, I think the BK Beauty one is a bit thinner still than the REPHR LC02. Size-wise, the REPHR LC02 is going to be a little shorter and also a little less wide than the BK Beauty 109 brush right here. Take a look at the side profile. The hairs start and end a little bit shorter on the REPHR one versus the 109 by BK. This one starts a little taller, ends a little taller. This one starts a little shorter, ends a little shorter right there. They have a very similar angle. I think because this one is so thin on the side profile, I still find it to be a bit more bendy. The BK one is a bit more bendy, I think, than the REPHR one, but there's barely a difference there. There's barely a difference. Actually, it's not just the side profile. The fact that the bristles are a little bit longer will also make it a bit more bendy than the REPHR one. Width-wise, there's barely a difference between the two, but the BK one is still a little bit wider than the REPHR one. And then feeling-wise, I think they both feel wonderful on the face. So the next comparison would be the REPHR LC02 versus the Angie Hot and Flashy A506 from BK Beauty, which is a brush that, by the way, I happen to absolutely love. Take a look right here at the side profile, and the main difference between these two is that the A506 is going to be a lot more narrow and a lot smaller overall than the LC02. It's like a different category of brush. This goes more into like concealer category, detail category, and this is just perfect for like blush and bronzer. So these are obviously going to be a lot more different. I think the more interesting comparison is going to be comparing the Angie Hot and Flashy A506 with the concealer brush from REPHR, which is going to be the REPHR LC01. And you guys can take a look right here at the difference between these two. Even though these are kind of in the same category of brush, I do find that the A506 from the Angie Hot and Flashy collection is a lot bigger and a lot fluffier than the REPHR one. And I don't prefer one over the other, but I'll tell you what I use them for that is different. As I mentioned earlier, I love using the REPHR LC01, previously the B05, which is the one I've been using for months now, on the inner corners of the eye to blend out my color corrector, or to blend out color corrector right underneath my inner corner of the under eye down here. I also love to use this one for primer all throughout the eyelid area. And while I can use the Angie Hot and Flashy one for that, it's not as small, not as convenient to use it on the inner corner of the eye because it's much bigger than the REPHR one, and so it's not as comfortable to use on the inner corner of the eye. I will say it does do a fabulous job underneath the eyes and also at blending out my primer on top of the eyelid. For people with smaller eyelids, it might still be a little bit too big for that though. But then I also want to add that I would prefer the Angie Hot and Flashy one over the REPHR one to blend out my concealer underneath the eyes, because I find that with the REPHR one, it takes a little longer to blend out the concealer underneath the eyes because you need to occupy a wider area, versus this one for concealer I find that it does the job a lot faster because it occupies a wider, bigger area of the under eye area when you compare it to this one. So I feel like they both have their own thing that they excel at. In conclusion, I find every single one of these brushes that I have talked to you guys about today to be incredible quality, fantastic, and essential to anyone's makeup collection. I do prefer the LC03 and the 115 from BK Beauty to the 101 from BK Beauty, just because I prefer the smaller size when it comes to blending out your foundation. But I found that both of these did a fantabulous job with foundation application, and I am definitely thrilled that REPHR now has the LC02 to blend out bronzer and blush, which I previously was mainly doing with the 109 from BK Beauty. And I do feel like both of these do a fantastic job at that task. I also don't have much of a preference between them. When it comes to price versus quality, I find that all of these brushes have incredible high quality in that you will buy them and have them in your collection for years to come. So obviously REPHR is going to be the more economical choice because you can get the trio for $50 versus $95 with BK Beauty. With that said, what I'm hoping for is that all of my comparisons help you at home to make the right decision for yourself. If you're going to go for the REPHR set, please shop it through the link I'm leaving you down in the description box of this video. And if you are shopping the BK Beauty set, I do have the set tagged on the video, so please grab it from there. That is all I have for today's video. I honestly hope that it was helpful, and for my part, I had an absolute blast comparing all of these fantastic makeup tools. I love you all so much. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you back in the next video. Bye.